delighted to be able to join colleagues such as Jack Weinstein, Vesko Garshevich, and others who already received this award. It's a recognition of the value that Pardee places on instructing our students to give them the skills and the knowledge they need to succeed in what is going to be a very challenging world. I learned from another diplomat that in world affairs, you have to be idealistic enough for your objectives to be worth pursuing, but you have to be realistic enough to have any chance of achieving them. I try to apply exactly that approach in the classroom as we prepare our students. When it comes to idealism, we should never tell our students what their ideals should be, but rather we should help them go through a journey of exploration so they can find out what matters to them most. Because once they find that out, that's when they will be most motivated. So for instance, so many of my students tell me they believe in equity in international affairs. And then we try to lead them through an exploration of what equity really means. Does it mean fairness? Does it mean justice? Does it mean equal outcomes or equal opportunities? And how do you apply that in different areas? That gives them an opportunity to really put meat on the bones of their ideals. But I do want to stress, I find our students to be very idealistic. One of the great strengths of Pardee is that we have a faculty made up of academic experts as well as practitioners with experience in the field. I try to work with my colleagues to understand theory at a deeper level because it has a certain power to it, and then try to teach students about how they would apply those theories in real-world situations. So we have students write memos, and memos that would be used, for instance, to address the Secretary General of the United Nations on a pressing issue, or a foreign minister, or perhaps the leader of an NGO. We also have them do presentations of the kind that you would do in front of a large group, such as the United Nations, where they have to make a presentation that is convincing, based in fact, and highly professional. We want them to be able to come out of Pardee with skills that they can apply immediately. I have to say, I love writing references for students where I can tell the organizations I'm writing to, expect this student on day one to be able to do the work of your institution because we train them at Pardee to do exactly that. Mentoring our students, honestly, is one of the greatest joys of working at the Pardee School. Our students want to do big things, and for them, it's so hard to get a foot in the door, as it is for any student around the world. A big part of what we do is really showing them that there's a universe of possibilities. Students will often be interested in doing something in diplomacy, for instance. And what I need to do for them is to show them that doesn't just mean being a foreign service officer, like what I did. It could also mean being a civil service officer in the Department of State. But you know what else? It could mean working in the Department of Commerce on trade policy, or it could be working for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on health diplomacy. What we try to do with mentorship is open up the world of possibilities for students and then try to connect them with people in that world who can give them opportunities to start. One of the things that students often ask me about is, how do you overcome imposter syndrome? And one of the things I'm happy to tell them is that even after 3 decades of representing the United States on the world stage, I still found myself having feelings of imposter syndrome. A lot of what we do with our students is telling them that when they're in the real world, they're going to have to deal with that and recognize that everyone is trying to overcome feelings that they're not quite up to what they're trying to achieve, and then showing them that actually they can be. That came up in class today. I said, I've been in front of the United Nations a million times giving speeches in front of hundreds of people, and I still felt it. The Pardee School is the Pardee School of Global Studies, and that is exactly what we need to focus on, because the challenges the world is dealing with now, the challenges I think our students care the most about, are almost always global challenges, from climate to migration to health. So what I try to do is to make sure that I focus our students on reading things that are both in-depth theory, but recent articles and speeches and UN resolutions. Tomorrow in class, we're going to be reading resolutions about Gaza and what the UN Security Council is trying to do on Gaza. That brings things right up to date for the students and gives them an opportunity to see how the theory that they're working on applies today in the real world on problems they really care about. What really separates people who are highly effective in international affairs is the ability not only to formulate important ideas, but to communicate them effectively. So one of the most important things that we do all the time is to teach communication skills, whether that's in writing or speaking, or even an elevator briefing where you just have 1 minute to convince a senior official that what you want them to do is the right thing to do. I find also that an incredibly important aspect of leadership is the moral aspect of leadership. I remember that Colin Powell was once asked what's the most important characteristic of a leader, and he said, followers. People will follow you if they believe that you are morally committed to them, to the team, and to ideals that they care about. At Pardee, we try to inculcate both communication skills and moral rectitude in what the students are doing. One of the best ways to do that is actually not in the classroom, but to support our students in many of their activities outside, whether that's leading the Phi Delta Alpha International Relations Fraternity, or working in the Alexander Hamilton Society, preparing different kinds of debates, or working on Atlas in preparing really good substantive articles to share. We try to teach leadership schools that are founded in strong values and strong morals. Very important for students to work through difficult issues through long analytic papers, the usual 20-page paper. But I often tell my students, after you graduate, especially from graduate studies, you probably are never writing a 20-page paper again. So what we try to teach students is not just to write briefly and concisely, but to write in a way that's persuasive, to convince an audience that their point of view is what needs to be done, and to show how it can be applied immediately in practical ways. That's not very easy to do, frankly, but that's exactly what you have to do in the workplace, whether it's in the United States government, the United Nations, an NGO, or for that matter, a corporation or even a law firm. What does it mean to advance human progress? So let me just take a shot at this. In 3 decades of working in American diplomacy around the world, one of the things that has really come home to me is that what separates progress in the world from actually very difficult and even highly destructive situations can sometimes be a very small thing. So one of the things that I think is most important is to show students that they must be pushing the ball forward all the time, and that they shouldn't be complacent, that we shouldn't expect that things will continue as they have, and that we shouldn't expect that terrible problems won't erupt and consume everything we're trying to do. As long as our students are dedicated in their careers to pushing forward goals they care about and ideals they believe in, that's the best way of ensuring that we will achieve human progress that matters. I think the most important piece of advice that I would give to students as they're beginning their careers is to recognize that the most important thing is to get your foot in the door, to develop skills, show what you can do, and then move ahead. So many of the students I work with want to get the ideal job as their first job. And I try to tell them, sure, I went on to become an ambassador and a deputy assistant secretary of state, but my first job in government was writing contracts to have barnacles scraped off of submarines. And actually, I learned a lot from that job. So I try to urge students, if there were one piece of advice, get your foot in the door. No matter what job you have, you will learn from it and make yourself more capable and more valuable and better able to achieve the bigger goals you aspire to.